Today, we are going to discuss the learning outcome, understanding the importance of user awareness in information security. Over this session, we'll look at why training staff really matters, what an organization-wide security strategy is actually for, and how the everyday choices people make can either open the door to attackers or slam it shut. Let's get started. Before we dig in, here's the shape of what's ahead. We'll start with why staff training is so central to keeping information secure, then move on to the purpose of security measures right across an organization. After that, we'll examine how a user's own activities can raise or lower risk, and along the way, we'll pause for worked examples, key terms, and some further reading. Think of it as three connected ideas: the people, the measures, and the behavior that ties them together. Let's begin with a slightly uncomfortable truth. No amount of clever technology can protect an organization on its own. Your staff are present at every single point where data is created, handled, or shared, which is exactly why attackers so often target the person rather than the system. A single untrained employee can quietly undo even the strongest technical controls, so training has to cover three things: recognizing an attack, responding when one is spotted, and reporting concerns openly. The aim isn't just to be protected, it's to be genuinely prepared. Good training starts by helping people recognize the shapes an attack can take. Social engineering is the big one: phishing emails, vishing phone calls, and pretexting, where someone impersonates a colleague or supplier to win your trust. Then, there are the more technical threats staff bump into: malware and ransomware, malicious links and attachments, and convincing fake login pages. And don't forget the physical and insider risks: someone tailgating through a secure door, an unlocked laptop left unattended, or a stray USB stick. The more variety people are aware of, the less likely they are to be caught off guard. Recognizing an attack is only half the job. Staff also need to know exactly what to do next. The immediate actions are simple, but crucial. Don't click, reply, or forward, isolate, or disconnect the device if you're told to, and report it through the agreed channel. Clear escalation routes matter here because they strip out the hesitation and confusion that let an incident grow. When people feel confident in the process, they report faster, and speed is really what limits the scale of the damage. Training only works if you actually check it's landed, and if staff feel able to speak up. You might test understanding with short quizzes, simulated phishing exercises, or scenario-based discussions, all of which reveal the gaps before an attacker finds them for you. Just as important is giving people a voice, whether that's anonymous reporting routes, open question and answer sessions, or feedback built into how the training is designed. That two-way communication is what builds trust in the whole process. Here's a common mistake: treating security training as a one-off box to tick. Knowledge and vigilance naturally decay over time, so a single session simply won't hold up in the long run. What works instead is regular reinforcement, scheduled annual or termly updates, short awareness campaigns in between, and quick bulletins whenever a new threat appears. Keeping security visible in this way steadily shifts behavior, rather than letting it fade the moment the training room empties. Let's make this concrete. An employee gets an email that looks like it's from a trusted supplier, asking them to confirm an invoice by clicking a link. Under time pressure, they click and enter their login details on what turns out to be a fake page. An untrained person doesn't pause to check the sender's details, but a trained one spots the telltale signs. the urgency, the unexpected request, and reports the email rather than acting on it. That quick report lets IT block the link right across the organization. Same scenario, completely different outcome, and the only variable that changed was training. So what does all this training actually buy the organization? It raises everyone's understanding of the risks, which in turn makes a successful attack far less likely and helps people catch a potential one earlier. Over time, it builds a genuine security culture rather than a set of rules people quietly resent. And there's a welcome bonus. It counts as continuing professional development, so staff are growing their own skills while they protect the business. Training has the most impact when it stops being a compliance exercise and simply becomes part of how people work. In a strong culture, security is a shared responsibility across every role, and leaders who model good practice quietly set the standard for everyone else. Staff feel able to challenge an unusual request without worrying they'll look foolish, and owning up to a mistake is seen as helpful rather than embarrassing. That kind of culture is the foundation every other security measure rests on. Threats don't stand still, so neither can the people teaching about them. Trainers and staff both need reliable sources of current information, specialist blogs and articles, vendor and supplier newsletters, and reputable industry websites and white papers. It also helps to build networks, connecting with peers on professional platforms, comparing notes with counterparts in other organizations, and getting along to relevant events. Keeping your knowledge current is what keeps the training itself relevant. Let's pin down a few terms you'll hear throughout. Phishing is a fraudulent message designed to trick someone into acting, while social engineering is the broader craft of manipulating people rather than systems to gain access. Security culture describes the shared attitudes and behaviors that support working safely, and an awareness campaign is the ongoing activity that keeps security visible between formal training. Finally, incident reporting is the agreed process for flagging a suspected attack, and CPD, continuing professional development, includes the security training itself. Let's pause and check a few things before we move on. Could you explain why staff are described as the organization's main method of protection, and what training should teach them to do the moment they spot an attack? Think about 2 ways an organization might test whether its training has actually stuck, and 2 real benefits that effective training delivers. And finally, why isn't a single session enough? Why do we keep coming back with refreshers? Have a think before we carry on. Now, we turn to the bigger picture, the information security strategy itself. A strategy sets out how an organization protects itself before, during, and after an attack, so it's fully covered rather than only partially patched. It lays out a range of measures ready to go in advance, defines what happens if an incident does occur, and spans hardware, software, networks, and user activity alike. The real value is coordination, a planned response instead of a scramble of ad hoc reactions. Let's take the strategy area by area, starting with the physical side. Protecting hardware means things like locked device storage, access-controlled server rooms, and proper procedures for tracking and disposing of assets. This cuts down on theft, loss, and anyone simply walking in and gaining physical access. It's easy to overlook, but physical security genuinely underpins every digital control you put in place, because lost or failed hardware can expose sensitive data all on its own. Next come the software, network, and system measures. Here we're talking about firewalls and network monitoring, disciplined patching and update schedules, and anti-malware combined with proper access controls. Together, these shrink the attack surface available to an intruder and keep systems resilient against both known and newly emerging threats. Ultimately, it's what allows the core business systems to keep running safely, day in, day out. The third area is user activity, and this is where the human and the technical meet. Measures include matching access permissions to a person's role, using multi-factor authentication, and monitoring accounts for unusual activity. The thinking here is that a user's actions are themselves a control point, which links straight back to the training we discussed a moment ago. Done well, these measures can protect the data even if a device or the network is compromised. It helps to see the two families of measures side by side. On the technical side, you've got firewalls and encryption, patch management, backup and recovery systems, and access control. On the people and process side sit staff training and awareness, clear reporting procedures, sensible policies on how devices and data are used, and regular testing and review. Neither column is enough on its own. It's the combination of the two that makes a strategy genuinely robust. Let's look at what good actually looks like in practice. Imagine an organization that combines scheduled refresher training, short awareness campaigns, simulated phishing tests, and a simple, well-publicized reporting route. And crucially, it thanks staff who report suspicious emails rather than criticizing them. The regular refreshers keep knowledge current. The simulations test understanding under realistic conditions, and that positive reporting culture encourages people to escalate quickly. It's a neat illustration of the organization-wide strategy in action, training, and technical measures pulling in the same direction. None of this works unless strategy and training are joined up. The strategy sets out the measures, but it's training that makes staff actually able to follow them, because a policy nobody understands is a policy nobody applies. The strategy also needs reviewing, as new threats and technologies come along, and that only happens when IT, HR, and management coordinate rather than work in silos. Between them, they cover the full picture: hardware, software, networks, and of course, the people. Time for another quick check. Can you state, in your own words, the overall purpose of an information security strategy and name the 4 areas it should protect? See if you can offer one technical measure and one people-focused measure, and be ready to say how they differ. And lastly, how exactly does staff training support the wider strategy? Take a moment with those before we move into the merit material. This final section carries a merit idea worth sitting with. The very same person can be an organization's greatest weakness or its strongest safeguard. Untrained, users get called the weakest link. Well-trained, they become the strongest line of defense. And what tips the balance is behavior, not just knowledge. By analyzing what people actually do day to day, we can see precisely where risk is created and where it's removed. That sets up a useful comparison between risky behaviors and protective ones. Let's lay those two sets of behaviors out. On the risky side, you'll find weak or reused passwords, clicking unverified links, using shadow IT, that is, unapproved tools and apps, leaving devices unlocked, oversharing information, and plugging in unapproved USB devices. On the protective side, people report phishing attempts, use multi-factor authentication, follow clear desk and access policies, verify anything that looks unusual, and complete their security training. The interesting thing is that these are often the very same everyday moments, just handled in opposite ways. Let's look at why the risky behaviors are so damaging. Weak or reused passwords make accounts easy to crack, and because people reuse them, one breach can unlock several systems at once. Clicking unverified links or turning to shadow IT bypasses the approved, monitored systems and opens a clear route in for malware. And unlocked devices or oversharing simply hand attackers opportunity and raw material. A glimpse of data here, a useful detail there. Individually, each one nudges up the odds of a successful attack. Together, they compound. Now flip it around, because protective behaviors pull the risk back down. Reporting a phishing attempt turns a single user into an early warning system and lets the organization respond right across the board. Multi-factor authentication means a stolen password is no longer enough on its own. There's a second barrier in the way, and following policy and verifying unusual requests closes the gaps that policy alone can't reach, slowing down attackers who rely on urgency and pressure. In short, good behavior converts the user from a target into an active control. So what decides whether people behave riskily or protectively? A large part of it is culture, training, the example set by leaders, and clear policy all shape the choices staff make, and a blame-free reporting culture in particular nudges people towards the protective end. It works the other way too. Relentless pressure and unrealistic workloads push people towards shortcuts. The lesson is that when we analyze behavior, we have to look at the environment people are working in, not just the individual. One last check before we wrap up. Can you give 3 examples of risky user behavior and 3 examples of protective behavior to set against them? Have a go at explaining that phrase, weakest link and strongest line of defense, in your own words. And think about how an organization's culture can steer the choices its people make. Those questions pull together everything we've covered in this outcome.